All right, let's just dive right into this explainer because we need to immediately shatter what is probably the biggest misconception out there about the global AI race. We all tend to think of artificial intelligence as this invisible software just floating around in the cloud, right? Like it's just a bunch of math and algorithms living purely in a digital realm. But the reality? It is a fierce, highly physical competition. Today, we're unpacking the massive power shifts happening between America and China, and as you'll see, this war has moved way beyond lines of code. We are talking concrete, power grids, and human capital. 2.7%. That's it. According to the highly respected 2026 Stanford AI Index report, the performance gap between the absolute top American AI model and China's DeepSeek model has collapsed to a razor-thin 2.7% on the ARENA leaderboard. Think about that for a second. Just a few years ago, the US was leading the world by an absolute mile in basically every single metric. But today, that old narrative that China can only copy what others build, yeah, that is officially dead. They are going toe-to-toe with the very best.
And here is where it gets genuinely wild. It presents this staggering paradox. When you look at private AI investment projected for 2025, America is outspending China by roughly 23 times. We're talking an immense $285.9 billion compared to China's $12.4 billion. Yet, like we just talked about, the actual performance gap has practically vanished. So the huge question is, how is it even possible that a nation can spend just a tiny fraction of the capital and still find itself in a neck-and-neck race?
Well, it shows us that the era of China merely catching up is well and truly over. Look at this trajectory. Back in 2023, the US was leading comfortably by, 17.5 to almost 32%. Fast forward a bit to early 2025, and China's DeepSeek R1 model actually tied the top US model. No gap at all. By March of 2026, the US clawed back that microscopic 2.7% lead. This completely shifts the nature of the competition. We've officially transitioned from a battle of software development into a brutal battle of physical execution and efficiency.
Which brings us to Section 1, the hidden energy bottleneck. Because AI is incredibly physical.
We have to remember that every single prompt you type requires a massive physical footprint, and that footprint is profoundly constrained by electricity. Top tech leaders in the US are actually ringing the alarm bells right now, warning that the limiting factor for AI deployment is no longer the software, it's electrical power. Visionaries like Elon Musk and Jensen Huang have been super open about this. The new secret weapon in the AI war? It's not having the slickest code. It's literally just having enough energy to turn the massive server farms on. Let's actually break down what that infrastructure looks like on the ground. Right now, China generates twice as much electricity as the US. Now sure, the US does have a massive lead in data centers. We're talking over 5,400 compared to China's 449. But there's a huge catch. Morgan Stanley projects American tech giants are gearing up to spend $630 billion on AI infrastructure. The problem? Our archaic US power grid actually caused a 50% drop in new data center projects late last year, stalling at least 36 major projects. Meanwhile, China? They're projecting 6 times more capacity growth over the next 5 years. To really wrap your head around the sheer scale of China's energy push, grab hold of this number, 430 gigawatts. In 2025 alone, China added an astonishing 430 gigawatts of wind and solar capacity. That is more than half of all the renewable energy added to the entire planet in a single year. So while American projects are slamming into regulatory walls and gridlock, China is executing one of the largest infrastructure expansions in human history, practically guaranteeing their AI ecosystem never runs out of breath.
Okay, let's move right into Section 2, the machine army and automating the real economy. 276,300. That is the exact number of industrial robots China recently installed. We are not talking about theoretical software here anymore. This demonstrates how they are taking AI and integrating it directly into the physical economy at just lightning speed. Think smart manufacturing systems, totally automated production lines, physical machines running 24/7. They are actively translating artificial intelligence into tangible, real-world economic output.
When you zoom out, this strategy translates to absolute, overwhelming scale. China is now responsible for a massive 51.1% of the global industrial robot share. Literally, they are installing more AI-driven industrial robots than the rest of the planet combined. By deploying on this massive scale, they're automating their workforce 7 times faster than America is. It's just a stunning display of economic transformation.
And we see that exact same scale showing up in the research.
Sure, the US is absolutely still leading the charge on those high-impact, breakthrough frontier models that make all the global headlines, but China owns a staggering 69.7% of all granted AI patents globally. Now, critics will jump in and argue that not all patents are created equal, and that's true, but China's massive ecosystem proves a really simple rule. Quantity inevitably breeds quality. More experiments lead to more discoveries, and eventually, to massive breakthroughs.
This leads us perfectly into Section 3, the talent and chip wars.
Now, America's historic superpower, it hasn't just been money. It's always been this incredible ability to attract the absolute smartest minds on the planet. But we are tracking a deeply troubling metric right now, an 89% drop. Since 2017, the influx of international AI researchers actually packing up and moving to the United States has plummeted by 89%. And get this, that includes an 80% collapse in just the last year alone.
Because at the end of the day, the AI war is a battle of human ecosystems. Now, the US still attracts 60% of the top global AI researchers, which is incredibly strong. But consider this. Only 30% of top US researchers are native-born. We rely heavily on immigration. Meanwhile, the share of elite scientists choosing to work in China has surged to 28%. Chinese researchers who previously would have migrated to Silicon Valley are increasingly just deciding to stay home. The talent pipeline that literally built the modern tech world is showing some really serious cracks.
Then you have to add in the ultimate geopolitical fault line right now, the semiconductor choke point. We're talking about the critical reliance on advanced microchips, like the ones from NVIDIA, and the Taiwanese manufacturing required to power all these modern AI systems. Current U.S. export controls are essentially forcing China to fend for themselves, cutting off their access to top-tier hardware. But, you know what they say, necessity is the mother of invention. This intense pressure is actually causing China to rapidly accelerate their own domestic chip alternatives, like Huawei, pushing them aggressively toward complete self-sufficiency.
All right, let's bring it all home with Section 4, why this matters to you.
Let's look at the actual tools being built today. We are seeing a massive open source takeover. Chinese open source models like Alibaba's Qwen series are actually overtaking major American models like Meta's Llama in global developer downloads. Why should you care? Because the basic foundational software that everyday developers, students, and startups are using to build tomorrow's companies is actively shifting eastward. The standards that get set today are going to dictate the entire tech ecosystem of the future.
And down at the everyday consumer level, it's honestly a bit surprising. Despite inventing so much of this generative AI technology, the US is seriously lagging in everyday adoption. The global average sits at a really robust 53%, but the United States, we're at just 28.3%, ranking 24th globally. While Asia is surging ahead, seamlessly integrating AI into their daily digital lives and workflows, American consumer excitement and integration has comparatively kind of stalled out.
And you better believe this directly translates to the workforce. These are the professions being actively impacted by AI right now. We aren't just talking about factory floors anymore. It's teachers, engineers, accountants, healthcare administrators, and entry-level white-collar workers. The Stanford 2026 report makes it crystal clear. Job disruption is not some distant future threat. It is actively altering wages, skills, and opportunities right now, today. If the U.S. loses its edge, the highest value opportunities and economic growth could very easily pack up and migrate to the nations that actually control the technology.
So, what's the game plan? How does America actually pivot here? Well, first off, we absolutely have to rebuild and modernize the electrical grid. You literally cannot power a 21st century AI revolution on a 20th century setup. Second, reform policies to attract and retain elite global talent. This brain drain we're seeing has to stop. And third, lead the creation of global AI safety and deployment standards. To maintain true leadership, the US has got to move beyond just throwing private monopoly money at the problem and start aggressively building physical infrastructure and securing that human capital.
Which brings us to one absolutely crucial question for you to ponder. Who wins the AI war in 2030? History has shown us time and again that the future belongs to those who actively prepare for it, not those who just sit back and assume they'll always be in the lead. When you consider the staggering shifts we've talked about today in physical infrastructure, energy grids, open source adoption, and global talent pipelines, who do you believe will truly lead the world 4 years from now? Let me know your thoughts and keep questioning the future.